Hi, this is Tracy from Photo Scraps, and today we're going to be doing a beach scene card using Distress inks and the great new Impression Obsession dies of the seabirds and the fence. So starting off, what I did is I die cut the seabirds. There's two different die sets. One is the seabirds that are in flight, and there's the other one with the seabirds that are on land. I will have all the code numbers and everything for you underneath the video, and it will be linking to our online store. What I did is I die cut them using just plain white cardstock, and then I colored them in using the Copic markers. So I started off coloring the feathers with the very neutral C1 on the Copic markers, and then I added some darker shading with the C3 and the C5. After I did kind of the feathers in the dark with the C5, I went back over it with the C0 just to kind of blend the feathers together so they didn't look so stark. And then I used the darkest one, the C5, in order to do the little legs on the birds. What really made the birds pop was taking the YR15 and just lightly shading their beaks in. Basically, like on the small bird, it was just a little dot of color, but that dot of color just really kind of made the bird come to life. Next, I took the fence die from Impression Obsession, and I only needed like 5 rungs from it, so I cut it apart, and then I cut between the die, getting rid of the little fence post connectors, and then I inked it up using the frayed burlap distress ink just to give it some shading and some color. I cut out the fence post so that way I could really bend it up when I put it on my card. I took a piece of craft cardstock and just tore the edge so I could kind of create my beach sand. I wanted to have that as a separate layer from the background. So you're just going to tear that, and then you're going to use the frayed burlap distress ink in the blending tool to just add some shading. I just kind of darkened the edge so it would really stand out, and then I just put some random shading spots on the sand just to kind of make it look like there was little impressions in the sand, little dark patches. I took a brushed corduroy distress marker and I used it in the Tim Holtz spritzer tool to just kind of add some spritzes of ink onto the craft cardstock just to give it a more of a kind of a sandy look. It gave it a little bit of look of a texture. It's a fun tool if you haven't tried to play with it yet, but it's great for adding some texture to your backgrounds. Next, I just kind of lined up my beach and a scrap piece of paper to kind of figure out where I wanted to have my ocean. And then I just turned it around and I used the Salty Ocean Distress ink to ink my ocean in. I wanted my ocean in a darker color than my sky, so that way I could really play up the difference between the sea and the sky. Next, what I did is I wanted to get my sky in there, so I punched out 3 little circles and I glued them together, and I used them as kind of a mask for my sky, so that way I could get some little clouds in there. And I used the distress ink in tumbled glass just to kind of put some shading on there. And I wanted to kind of you just move it around, and then you just lightly put the ink on there. In the areas that were a little too white, I went back with the blending tool and just added a little bit more color, just so that way the sky had some shading and clouds, a little bit of everything in it. The distress inks are great because you can add color pretty much anywhere you want on your paper, and it just can give you a nice shading. I always usually use my craft mat when I'm putting on my inks, so that way I have a nice surface to work from. You usually want to start off the card or layout, whatever you're doing, and then kind of bring the ink from the sides. Next, I took liquid pearls. Now, this is a way that Ranger tells you not to use liquid pearls, but I kind of used them. I didn't have any of the liquid applique on hand to do the foamy parts of the ocean and the waves. So what I did is I just put down a layer of the liquid pearls in the white opal. Just kind of blended it on there. If you want, you can just get your finger in there and just kind of move it around a little bit. You don't want to totally coat the ocean because you want to see the blue in the background. Then what I did is I sprinkled on a little bit of white chunky ultra thick white chunky ultra thick embossing powder. I didn't want to coat the whole thing of the liquid pearls because I wanted to save some space for the holographic embossing powder. This is just a holographic glitter embossing powder that I filled in all the rest with. And then I just tapped off the excess. I used a paintbrush just to brush away the excess holographic glitter powder from the sky. Distress ink is a wet ink, so it does stay wet long enough that you can do some light embossing with it, and I didn't want the glitter to stick to my sky. I only wanted my glitter to stick to my ocean. Then I heated it all up with my heat gun. So this is what Ranger tells you not to do. Because what happens is when you heat up the liquid pearls, you're going to get popping and crackling. It kind of sounds like you just poured milk into a bowl of Rice Krispies, but it really kind of puffs up the liquid pearls, and then it melts all the embossing powder kind of all together, so it gives you a really cool look of texture. The last thing I did is I took a little punch circle and I just inked it up with some mustard seed and wild honey inks just to give the sun a little bit of color. And then once you have all your pieces put together, what I did last was I added some seagrass to the beach sand using one of the green distress markers, the fine tip tool, and I just kind of drew in some light little sprigs of grass just to give it a little bit different look. Now once you have all your pieces, you can just kind of lay them together. I didn't glue the birds completely flatly to the card. I just kind of lifted a wing here and there, so that way it gave it a little bit more texture and gave you that three-dimensional look. Thanks for watching the video, and hope to see you soon at Photoscraps. If you're not able to make it out to Photoscraps, we are now starting an online store. I'm kind of slowly building the product up in the store to kind of go along with our videos. So the items that we used in today's video are going to be available in our online store. The links are going to be right below for you to make it easy for you to shop. We're going to have options whereas if you live locally, you can pick up the products at the store, but if you don't live locally, we will gladly be able to ship to you anywhere in the United States. So check out the website and see you soon. Take care.